Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this Zyxel webinar about surveillance PoE switches, which are the new switch series that we have released for the surveillance market. My name is Jukka Vesa, and today's webinar is a short one, so if you are thinking of going to get some coffee, please don't stay in and listen. All right. So first of all, let's start with why have we developed switches for the surveillance market. First of all, IP cameras obviously need power. They need that power to be reliable, and many of the switches used at this market are from the lower end, which of course means that when you use cheap switches, the reliability of those switches and design of those switches isn't really optimal for the market, which of course creates a lot of maintenance costs because you need to go rebooting the switches, rebooting the cameras, etc. Plus things tend to break down when they are cheaply made. Okay, and in many occasions you just use a standard PoE injector for powering the cameras. Okay, so first the unmanaged switch series that we have released called GS1300. We have three models that we have released: 10 HP, 18 and 26 port models, all with a nice PoE budget of from the smaller end 130 watts to the 26 HP 250 watts. And all of these switches come with an extended PoE feature, so we can support PoE cameras up to 250 meters away from the switch. And it's a standardized feature, and the data rate and that length will be 10 megabytes per second. And the feature is available in both unmanaged and managed series. In the managed series, we are introducing 4 new models: 6, 12, 18 and 26 port models. The management of these switches is going through a web interface or a command line interface. All the basic normal layer 2 feature set like virtual LANs, etc. are there. These switches are going to be introduced to our Nebula Cloud Management platform sometime next year, most likely on the second half of 2020. In the managed switches, you also have a bigger PoE budget, and you can select which PoE mode you want to choose. Do you want to use a classification or a consumption mode? The party trick of the 6 HP is that it supports BT power standard or high PoE standard, and it can allocate all of its 16 watts of PoE budget to one single port and power up a heated motorized dome camera, for example, that has a huge requirement for PoE power. Something worth mentioning as well is the revised LEDs on the front panel of the switches. You can easily see if it's cloud managed or not, and you can see the PoE budget usage from the front panel, so you do not even have to go to the web interface to see how much of the PoE budget is being consumed at any given time. So you can just easily see it from the LEDs. About the new software features that we are introducing on the GS1350 series are continuous PoE at first, which is able to supply power to the cameras constantly when switch is undergoing some of the following things. So if we are changing configurations, rebooting the switch, resetting it to factory default, upgrading firmwares, or if the switch has to reboot due to a software fault scenario of some kind. Basically what this does is it keeps the cameras running constantly. So it reduces the downtime needed to reboot a switch, do maintenance drastically, because you only need to reboot the switch and the data will be down just for the couple of seconds when the switch reboots, rather than the switch having to reboot and then powering on all the cameras once again. Then you would need to wait for the switch to reboot and then the cameras to reboot. So we cut the maintenance time a lot by doing this. The second nice feature that we can see from the maintenance menu or the web GUI of the camera, web GUI of the switch, is a camera status indicators. We can also see what cameras are connected to each port and what IP addresses do they have. We can easily manually power cycle the camera from the web GUI of the switch, and even some cameras we are able to reset to default. The indicator lights on the web GUI means green is obviously okay, the camera is doing fine and responding to the switch. Yellow, the switch is automatically trying to recover the camera or it's being power cycled. And red, the camera is unavailable and not responding. Then the auto camera recovery, which actually indicates the lights from the previous, or creates the lights from the previous slide. We have two methods of checking if the cameras are alive or not. We are able to use LLDP, which is the neighboring protocol that is able to check the camera vendor type, IP address, etc. from the camera. This of course needs support from the camera, but it is commonly supported protocol in almost all of networking devices. The other option we have is simply ping the device, which is supported by all of the networking devices, but it doesn't require the intelligence of LLDP. So you pretty much need to know if your camera supports LLDP or not, or you can check it. You can of course set how many times and how often does it check if the camera is alive or not, and what it does if the camera isn't alive, meaning how many times do I try to reboot the camera, how long do I keep the port powered down before I power it up again, so we don't just send a short off on signal to the camera, but we keep it cold for 10 to even 30 seconds, however long we choose. We can also select what to do if these methods fail. We can choose to try and reboot and then send an alarm if the camera isn't being recovered, or just send an alarm immediately if the camera goes down for some reason. From the hardware options, we have an enhanced search protection 4 times the standard and double the ESD protection. So a lot better search and ESD protection than applies in the standard, which is very handy when we have outdoor cameras and possible searches coming from there. Then just a summary of what are the summary of all devices introduced in this slideshow. 3 unmanaged models and 4 managed models. And just some things that I would like to point out is that every surveillance switch has a higher PoE budget than the 1100 or the 1900 series, and a lot higher than many of our competitors. Also, all the unmanaged switches have an internal power supply, and they have also the PoE max usage LADs, extended range, and a wider usage temperature. So we are able to, even though the devices are not rugged, they are being able to use in cold environments like non-heated warehouses or parking garages, as long as they are in a dry, nice cabinet. In the managed switches, of course, the software features that I already talked about, better ESD and surge protection, PoE LADs, and then something that is common to all of our new switch models, we have a restore button or a last good configuration or a last good button. Restore button is a more accurate term in here. What it actually does is it allows you to set a custom default configuration to that switch, meaning that if you lose connection from missed configuration or from whatever reason, somebody that is on site is just simply able to press a restore button to restore the device to your own custom default configuration with your own IP addresses, your own virtual LANs, etc. Whatever settings do you have as base configuration settings, so at least you can access it remotely once again if something has gone wrong. So you do not need to do a factory reset and, in the worst case scenario, drive on location to do the configuration or arrange somebody with a laptop and a team viewer to have access to that switch. Okay, I think that was all from the presentation today. As said, it was a fairly short one. And if you have any questions, please just put them into the questions section of GoToWebinar. And I will keep the webinar running for a couple of minutes and wait if there are any questions. If not, I will thank you all for attending and have a great afternoon. Thank you. Okay, a couple of questions. Isn't 60 watt PoE output for PTZ? So PTZ, sorry. Sorry, I don't know what a PTZ is or can't remember, but any BT standard unclassified device is able to use BT standard PoE, which is 60 watts. And another question, what is the MSRP? Where have you seen that acronym? Because don't really know either. That is something that you can get from our sales department or the distributor of your choices website. Unfortunately, I don't know the accurate prices for each country. Okay, seems that there are no more questions. If something comes to mind after this webinar, feel free to drop me an email to jukka@zeisel.fi. So thank you for attending and have a great afternoon. Bye bye.